We are live. We are going to be talking to Mia Hebib today. Looking forward to it. She comes from, actually, she was born in Bosnia, raised in Croatia, and then came to America to pursue a career. So I think that's really pretty exciting. As we wait for her to join us, I thought I'd mention a little bit on who we are. We are Artners Gallery. We started up about 9 years ago, trying to bring fine art jewelry to a broader audience. We are part of the industry ourselves. We've done a lot of trade shows, and we've met most of these artists that are on our gallery ourselves and can vouch for their work. They're all very high quality, excellent work. Now, we're an online gallery, so we don't actually own the merchandise. We use a drop shipment model. So when you place an order, we inform the artist, and they ship it out if they have it in stock. If they don't have it in stock, they make it. And that's why we have an availability date on our website. It gives you an idea how long it takes for the jeweler to make the product that you ordered. And then that particular person will ship it out, and hopefully you'll love it. All of our shipping is free. Anything, well, actually all ground shipping is free within the continental US and Canada. All of our artists live and work in the US, and in one case in Canada. All of our products are handmade in North America as a result. However, we do have a lot of artists from overseas, and one of them happens to be Mia. So let's see, Mia, are you out there? Let me see if I can get Mia here. I see she's joined, but I can't get her to say hello to us. Okay. There. Let's see if she pops in here. She's connecting. There she is.
Hi.
Hi. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Fantastic, fantastic. I got about 30 seconds before you came on to talk about Artners Gallery a little bit. Tell
Oh,
people who
perfect.
we are and what we're trying to do. So
Did you get all your information in? Do you need
I
more?
think so.
You
Uh,
did?
it takes me about 30 seconds. Just an elevator speech type of thing,
Oh, good, good. Well, we all do
So
practice for that, so we can get our point across super, super, super fast.
that's absolutely true. And I always kind of end with, I always like the fact that a lot of artists come from overseas, and you happen to be one of them.
Yep.
You were born in Bosnia, raised in Croatia, and presto, you're in America, building your business. So how did you manage to come over here? I know there was a little war going on there that was not too much fun. So
Um,
yeah.
I moved in 1996, so like right after the Dayton Agreement, which was signed in 1995.
Hmm.
And my mom was actually super politically charged, and she decided that we needed to leave. So in terms of having the ability for me to pursue higher education, providing me a little bit more of a future than I was going to have back there. So we
Hmm.
moved to the United States in 1996. I lived in Atlanta for about a year, and then I attended Savannah College of Art and Design for
Right.
4 years. And then after that, I moved to New York in 2001, just in time for 9/11.
Lots of fun.
Yes.
Lots of fun. Um, okay, that sounds great. Now let me ask you one question. Were you always interested in making jewelry, or did you ever have any other interests before that? Even artistic
Well,
interests, but not in jewelry?
I was a singer, and I
Hmm.
played the flute. So I sang
Well,
professionally for, let's see, how long did I sing professionally for? Probably for about at least 10 or 12 years. And I
wow,
was
I did not
convinced
know
that,
that.
yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Um, and so I sang, and I think actually, if I think about my work and singing and music, there's a fluidity to music that there is a fluidity to my work. So there is some kind of a
Hmm.
connection there. But and I played the flute for about 5 years, but somehow it was just a combination of like bad teachers and timing wasn't correct. that I never really got the hang of it, and um, I did not fully pursue it. And my friend Arnold just joined, and he's like, I didn't know that either. I guess we never
Yeah, I
had
see
that
the comment
conversation.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I sang in a choir and I sang solo for a long
Wow.
time. As a matter of fact, I told Ivan, my husband, that when I retire, I will have a cabaret career. It will happen. And it will involve me smoking again, probably once a while.
Uh-oh.
No, like, but just for the whole
You can't be a
little.
cabaret singer and not, have the whole smoking
Exactly,
thing going on. I
exactly. You
know.
have to have the glove, the long like cigarette stick, and all of that. So
Sure.
that's my plan.
So when did you really become interested in making jewelry and metalsmithing in particular?
So, right, I'm sorry, I forgot to kind of segue into what exactly happened. So, I was in the music sort of pathway, and somehow it didn't align with the time that I was going to attend high school.
Hmm.
And for some odd reason, usually so not for some odd reason, but in Croatia, people, you can pick a magnet school to go to. It's more common than just getting a general education. It's
Hmm.
called gymnasium, where you get everything. So it could be mathematically driven, or like sciences, or it could be languages. And I went to an art school. I wanted to go to art school. So when I realized that I'm not going to be able to go to pursue music, and I wouldn't say that I necessarily at that moment in time I felt like it was the right thing to do.
Hmm.
So my stepfather was an artist, my dad is an artist. I was like, well, I'll just go. I'll do an art degree. Why not?
Yeah.
So I went to school for applied arts and design in Zagreb. It's an old school. It's been around for probably 200 years now,
Hmm.
and it's a beautiful school downtown Zagreb. And the first year after you have your just general education, you get to pick a direction. So you could go
Hmm.
pursue sculpture, you could pursue graphic arts, and those were the two, and painting. Those three departments were like always hot, so many people, and I was just like, oh, I don't like so many people. So we had this little beautiful courtyard, and across the courtyard were this little workshop, and I went over there, and it was just like it was like five people, and it included all these tools, and I was like, what's this? So it was happenstance. I just happened
Hmm.
to pick that, and I went to pursue jewelry. And I think maybe when I look at some of my pictures when I was younger, I did wear a lot of jewelry, but I wasn't necessarily interested in jewelry per se.
Hmm.
But I am interested in making. And I think that for
Hmm.
me, ultimately, like making something was, it's really important. And then the fact that it gets to be wearable, that's almost like secondary, but it has to be wearable. So,
Yes,
hi,
absolutely.
Judy.
Yeah. Hi, Judy. I see
I
she's
haven't
here.
seen,
Yeah.
I haven't talked to her in a very long time. So nice to see you.
Yes. Wearability is very important. You see some of these, for lack of a better term, I'll call it art jewelry, that's simply not wearable. It's beautiful stuff, but you can't, it just isn't
Right.
going to hold up if you try to wear it. I think that's a very important aspect. And your jewelry, I know, is readily wearable and it's very comfortable. And we'll get into that in a little bit of time here.
Right.
But
But I do actually want to say to you, like, I
mm,
didn't, for the longest time, because I was just interested in making, I wasn't wearing my pieces.
mm,
And, people would be like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm a jewelry artist. And like, where is it? I'm like, well, it's in my studio. And not until I started wearing the pieces, I realized that that became, not the secondary, but almost like a parallel pursuit of how avant-garde and how big and interesting can these sculptural forms get
mhm,
without sacrificing the wearability component. So it's
right.
almost like a double play, and not double play, but there's like a parallel pursuit that happens in my work. So
So you kind of your own experiment, so to speak.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Which happens to be that I have usually tons of marks like right on my arms because I test every single cuff, and sometimes that's detrimental to my arms.
Okay, well, let me see now. You're in New York City and you're working, doing mostly corporate design work. I mean, you were with Claiborne and Henry Vandel and I can never say it right, BCBG. Did I get it right?
Right, right,
I know you worked
right.
with them and you did some consulting with Robert Lee Morris and you can't get
Hmm.
much bigger than that. Why did you change direction? Suddenly you're doing art jewelry instead of kind of more fashionable.
Well, I'm a maker at heart, and I went into, when I moved to New York, like I said, it was kind of unfortunate timing. 9/11 happened, and all I wanted to do was move here, set up shop, and, be an artist, because that's what you come to do in New York. And then you get this giant rent bill, and you're like, oh, I'm not sure how I'm going to do all this. So
Yeah.
I ended up applying for a job, and I actually applied for, and it was terrible timing. So I ended up applying for a job, and I got a job as a designer, and in a small company that I fled for like after about 6 months, and then I went and worked at Jack Mel, where I met Keiko,
Hmm.
also an artist at Artners, and then subsequently from there, I went to Liz Claiborne, which actually was really interesting because that's the first time where I was like, oh, I could grow in this, and there's strata to kind of move forward and above. And
Hmm.
but I realized that it was very clear, and it seemed very cyclical, and it seemed very expected. And so in 2007, I decided that I've made enough sort of contacts, and I knew kind of what I was doing. And I was like, I'm going to keep freelancing and doing things, but I'm going to try making things, because connecting with making, like being in the studio and making things and connecting with people and sort of trying new things it seemed like an unexpected thing, meaning like I didn't know what the path was. I didn't really know what will be, how would I grow? What will this business look like?
Hmm.
Whereas when the corporate world, I knew that if I stayed at this position and I did X,
Move
I
your
will
way
move
up. Yeah.
exactly. And, up until the point where I would kind of reach a plateau. So it was purely because of that. But I did, I kept my foot in both worlds,
Hmm.
because I'm not necessarily super keen on being constantly on my own. So I always like held on to
Mm.
freelance gigs. I always was doing things on the side, and I wanted to kind of keep a pulse on what's happening in the rest of the industry too. So I juggled both worlds, and I feel like they can kind of coexist. But my passion is, making and connecting and sort of expressing
Good.
myself through this jewelry. So it was a little bit more, it's like a lot of little moving parts that influenced that decision.
You wanted to make it too. In the corporate world, you're really a designer and
Yes.
almost a salesperson to some extent. So it's a little bit different world. I mean, I have a lot of experience in the corporate world. So
Right.
not in
Yes,
the
you do.
jewelry end of it, but I know what the corporate world is like. Yeah, it's a little bit different. You
Financial,
want to make
yes.
your own, but it
Yeah,
does
and
give you a steady paycheck. So
exactly. I
yeah.
think that's the one thing that, I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine, and she's like, well, what are the things you miss? And I'm like, well, paychecks are always really nice, but now, like, when I look at the money that I earn, every single penny of that money is hard earned. Whereas,
Sure.
like, sometimes I think that, you could really slack in the corporate world and kind of, ride on your own coattails or something else. Like you could just get by. Whereas here, it's like whatever you do sell and whatever you do make, you really truly is a work of your hands and your effort, and
Hmm.
it's very traceable.
Well, you own it. I mean, you own
Yes,
it. In a
all of
corporate
it.
world, yeah, all the time, good or bad, you own it.
Exactly,
So it's a lot
exactly.
different feel being your own. I hate to say your own boss, but your own creator, your own seller, your own everything. It's a lot different than when you're in the corporate world. That I can
Right,
understand.
right.
Right. So you named your company Oblique Atelier, and I understand oblique in Croatian means shape.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So yeah.
go ahead.
So
Sorry,
is
sorry.
that no? I mean, is that how you feel about your jewelry? Is it all about shape?
Well, yeah, when I first started the jewelry back in 2000, well, actually, I was doing like little shows and like street fairs in Soho, just, to get
Hmm.
by and like just kind of keep making things. And I had my business card, which I found when we were moving recently, said Mia Hebib Jewelry. And I just never really, I was like, well, why does it have to be my name? Like, I never really felt that it is about me. It's more about what I'm doing. And I
Hmm.
wanted to make that clear separation. So I ended up, I was looking around, and I remember, I don't even know, I feel like I was traveling, and I always had a little notebook and a planner, a calendar planner, that was not on my phone. And I
Oh, you
still
have a
do
real one,
actually.
in other words. Yeah.
Yeah. And it included everything from things that were, to-do lists to like doodles and sketches and whatever. So on one of those, I kept like doing this little shape and drawing a kind of an ellipse and ellipse and ellipse. And I was like,
Hmm.
oblique, oblique. And I looked at the work that I'm doing and I was like, this makes perfect sense. And mathematically, oblique also
Hmm.
translates, in English, in French, in Croatian, and
It
it
does,
kind
yeah.
of seems to marry, many different things. But it definitely means shape. So, if I look at, I'm just like, I am into these shapes and creating interesting shapes out of, pieces of wire and pieces of sheet. So, um, and I think that like pursuit of the most beautiful and delicate and elegant, not delicate, but like elegant shape is definitely what I'm after in every single piece.
Hmm.
So it made sense at the time. And I think that it
Right,
still does to call it oblique atelier.
right.
So it could exist as a separate entity on its own without me.
Sure, sure, sure. No, that makes perfect sense. If you were going to use two other words to describe your jewelry, though, what would you use besides shape?
Well, I mean, there's like a lot of fierce components to it. There's wearable sculpture is kind of what I go after because it really is sculpture and miniature sculpture. So, and the wearable component makes it a piece of jewelry. Obviously, I think that it's fluid and there is feminine quality, but it's very powerful. I don't think that my pieces are masculine at all, but they
Hmm.
are bold and they can kind of stand on their own. So those are some of the adjectives and attributes that I
Okay,
think of.
all right.
That good?
Yeah, that sounds good. So, what inspires you then? How do you come up with these pieces?
Well, it's really interesting. I had to think about that question for many years, especially when I was doing residency at the Museum of Arts and Design. People would walk into the studio and they're like, "So what inspires you?" I'm like, I don't know.
You sound like Keiko,
It was just a hard question to kind of pinpoint and say like this one thing. And because I spent 6 months in that museum, I really had to kind of hone in on what is it that inspires me and what does that mean? Or like what kind of like what drives this creative process? And basically I look at things around me for sure, but I don't necessarily take direct inspiration. Like I look at shadows, how they occur. I look at architectural forms that I like. I look at, interior design and chairs and things like that. But I wouldn't necessarily say like, oh, this inspires me. What ends up happening is I would have a thought or I would have, if you take a look at my bench and I would just kind of
yeah. Why don't we
share.
get into what you have there and
It's
show
this
us
is
how you?
junk, right? So like I will have something like this that would sit here for a while and it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but I will create something like this that might not turn to be anything now, but it might be something later, and then that's another
Mhm.
form. So for me, it's like one design and one piece like kind of triggers the next one. So like this is a prototype that I'm not sure if it will go anywhere, but
Hmm.
I just sort of like
Looks pretty
created a
interesting.
shape. Yeah. And I left it there and I was like, maybe it will become a piece of jewelry. Who knows? And then I created a pin for a show and I ended up, you'll see these be done. Like I ended up creating a pair of earrings that I was sort of looking at these little
Mm.
folds and
Hmm.
forms. Um, these were scraps that were left over from a ring that ended
Hmm.
up actually becoming two different pairs of earrings. So it's like, I look at things and I keep looking at them, and at some point they start to make sense. They start to like become another shape, another form. So for me, it's almost like this: I create one thing, and then in turn inspires another thing, and in turn inspires another
Hmm.
thing, etc. So it's just a sort of like fluid process.
So I think fluid is a very good. So you kind of sit there and the metal is sitting in front of you, and then you just kind of attack it and
Yeah,
see what
yeah,
happens.
yeah.
You don't
A
really
lot of
have a drawing in your head or anything. Yeah.
I have a sort of an idea. I have a very clear three-dimensional object in my mind. In my mind's
Hmm.
eye, there is that clear three-dimensional object. But at the same time, I will sketch it after it's made. Like it would, you know what I mean? Like I don't sketch it
Before, yeah.
prior to actually
Right.
making it. So I'll go in and I'll doodle with it and I'll play with it, and then
Yeah.
only until after I made it and I actually see that it works, that's when I'll sketch it. So.
Okay, to kind of
Yeah.
memorialize it, and you can make it
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, sort
yeah,
of work it out because a lot of times it's a very fluid process and I don't really know how I made it. So then I had to kind of retrace my steps and rework it so I could recreate it,
interesting.
you know? So,
Yeah, no, that's
yeah,
interesting. It's almost like a backwards process, and well, not quite,
exactly.
but that's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
not so many people they might start with a three-dimensional design, or in their, in your case, it's kind of a vague thing in your head that you create as you go. So I think
right,
it's
right.
really interesting. I think why don't we kind of look at your studio, see where
Sure,
you're at, and what you have laying around, what you're working on,
sure.
and
So I will just put my mask back on because I'll stand up. I share a studio in,
mhm.
I work out of Brooklyn Metalwork, so I'll share with you kind of what that looks like here. And it's not, a lot of times there are different people here, but this is a floor where people run businesses. They also do like school. I think you could probably hear my comrade over there
I can
drilling
hear a little bit,
away.
yeah, a little bit in the background, yeah.
So this is my bench, and it's pretty. There's a lot of things going around. Like I always keep. People would say like, "Oh, that's just so messy," but I keep these things as like things that I look at. So I constantly look at stuff. Like this is a scrap of something that I don't know if may or may not become something. I think it's kind of cool. I was mentioning that earring that I was doing, and this was the first test and prototype. But I was like, oh, maybe, things like this where they're like mini little sketches and croquis in metal. I don't know if this will become something, but I love what that looks like.
Hmm.
I was recently at the shore on a super cold day,
Oh.
so now I brought these back. These are my new trays for keeping things, so that makes me very happy. And currently, I'm actually working in bronze. So I was just drawing down this wire and I'm gonna figure out if I can make a pair of earrings out of this. So it started off with a 3 millimeter thick bronze wire, and then I totally rolled it down. And then who knows what's gonna happen there? But you could stay tuned, and in a couple of days there might be something. And these are my best-selling earrings of last year called Mobius. I have sold so
Hmm.
many. So I was just repairing actually because I was trying to pair them up. Every single one is totally different. So the two pairs were not matching, and then I had to sort of make the pairs so I could pair them up correctly. And then I'm kind of playing back with some of my bronze pieces, and it's bronze is a little bit different than brass, so I'm almost like learning how to work with it. Like there's a color difference. See, so this is brass. This is all
Yeah,
raw metal.
yeah, most of your work's in brass, right? You usually
Yes,
plate it with gold
yes,
or silver. Yeah.
exactly. But I'm trying to. I did for my birthday. I created these birthday ring series, and they were really fun and they were really well received. And it was like an exercise. So now I wanted to kind of figure out like how can I evolve that? And they were not plated; they were just raw brass. So I
Mm.
wanted to evolve that, and I really love the color of bronze. So I'm going to
Hmm.
give it a try.
All
Don't
right.
know.
A
Yeah,
little bit something different. Now,
yeah.
you
And
don't
then
use, yeah. Now,
go ahead.
I was always curious. You don't use gemstones or diamonds or anything like that. You focus on the metal and the shapes. Is that by design or?
Well, so I feel like, I don't want to be disrespectful in any way towards people that do use stones. I feel like it's like a form that requires, like metal is a form that requires attention and it can have an expression of its own. That being said, last year, actually this year, I was planning on going to Tucson Gem Show and I was
Oh,
going to
wow.
pick up a few things and I was just going to see how I feel about that and seeing if I could marry the two. When I first started my business, I did fine jewelry and I used diamonds
Mhm.
and some gemstones, very, very small. It was just an accent. And I feel like I'm drawn to the shapes. So I feel like if I put in too many elements, it kind of takes it away. So that's why I was
Yeah.
never fully interested in it. But I do think that there's room for it. So maybe down the road, I might do a
Mhm.
little something, something. We'll see.
Yeah.
Um, but it's the purity, like the purity of metal, and what can you say in metal alone? And then maybe as you continue to grow, like how can you then add that element of color without, sacrificing the way that that form
The
looks.
shape.
So,
You don't want to distract from the shape itself.
exactly,
What you're trying to
exactly.
say. I
Yeah,
understand. I
yeah.
understand.
And then, so let me show you a little bit. So you were looking at raw brass, but when things are
Yeah, I love
finished,
that piece. Yeah.
I polish it. Everything is hand polished and then plated. And then this actual piece has leather. So it's a little bit juxtaposition of this hard collar and soft,
Hmm. Yeah,
which
that's
I
great.
think
I
is
love
just
that.
really nice. I like to sort of play. And usually, this is actually something that I introduced couple of years ago where I wanted to create this collar. But again, this is one single wire.
Oh,
So
wow.
I just kind of go back and forth and I bend it until I create the shape. And of course, like this means that each one is completely different. But
Hmm.
it's this test of patience in a way of like, how do you create a piece of sculpture that's interesting and wearable, which makes it super, super light, the way that like you could just kind of move this and put it on. And then these are some of the new designs. So this is actually that piece finished. This is the pair of earrings.
Uh-huh.
And it's called
Oh,
I'm
nice.
bolting out of here because it looked like a little bolt lighting bolt. But it's
It
just a
does.
really nice piece. And then actually what's really pretty about it is the way that there's like that little curve. It really
Hmm.
frames the face nice. So I
How
happen
long are
to.
those?
Those are about maybe 2 inches. Let me see. Hold on. I'm going to get my fancy.
Yeah, they're
Let's
very
see.
cool.
Let's do QVC tie style here. And for your information, this is an inch and a half.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then these are really lovely because they're very, very simple, but they're just
Hmm.
really delicate. Just a
Kind of a
little,
classic design. Yeah.
yeah. And I don't get to make a lot of simple things. So I thought this was really cool.
Hmm.
And then this is a take on a hoop. This is called Armor. These are all new things that I made last year. So it's just an interesting design. It just looks like a sheet of metal, but then, there's just a lot of curvature and
Sure.
things on the side.
Yeah, even the front itself is shaped. It's not flat.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you can wear it either way. So like depending on
Mhm.
like your face, the shape of your face and your jaw. You had posted about these earrings.
Right,
These are
right.
called
Just
the Insiders.
mhm.
This is just a really light hoop, but what I love is just the fact that it's kind of hidden design. So from the front, you just have this line, and it looks like a standard hoop, but on the
Mhm.
side, it's that. And this is a little bit larger. This is about an inch and a half, an inch and 3/4.
Right, yeah.
But it's just a sheet, this is also a single sheet that I formed back and forth. And I
Tough
love
to
this
make that
little
one again.
detail.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then some other pieces. These are drawing number one. It's one of my favorite designs. I happen to wear this earring all the time. This is also one single wire. So
Hmm.
I basically, take anywhere about, 15, 20 inches of wire and then I go to town and see what happens. And sometimes it works and other times it doesn't. This is clouds, same thing. So this is
Hmm.
again a small little wire, or sorry, short wire, but then it's curled and has these little loops and then has a little hammer
Yeah,
detail on the
yeah.
bottom.
Yeah,
So it's
like
just a
three
really
loops of that.
nice,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's very light. My personal favorite, this is part of the
Hmm.
Croquis series. This is a little drawing in metal. So it's just again, a
Yeah.
single wire. And I love this piece. I actually wear it either on the back of the jacket or in the middle. Like I tend to sort of not wear this pin in a way that usually people wear it, but this is one of my favorites.
Yeah. I saw you had something out that you were trying to reinvent the brooch. You were trying to encourage people to go back to that.
I just think brooches are fun and they're kind of given the, grandma status. So
Yeah.
I think it's up to us designers to continue to challenge that and make sure that people are wearing pins and wearing them in creative and different ways and not just kind of saying, oh, it's my grandmother's style. Um, and then, I was
Yeah.
saying
It's
about that
cool now.
scrap of metal that,
Oh, yeah.
that you saw. So these earrings are called remnants and they're asymmetrical, which is what I love.
I
So
see.
depending
Yeah.
on what kind of scrap you have is what you could
Hmm.
use. And you could probably wear a single one and then do something else on the other side. But I made them and then I just kind of posted them, and one of my customers was like, I love these. And I said, why don't you name them? So she called them remnants, just because they are remnants of metal. So,
You
and
get two
then
pairs of those and mix and match each pair.
exactly. And I make them actually in sterling silver too. So just different ones each time. And then some of my favorite rings, this
Oh
guy,
yeah.
this is the Andy. And the reason why it's called the Andy is because I love Andy Goldsworthy. He's a Scottish
Mm.
sculptor, and he makes these sort of impermanent, beautiful, very fluid shapes. They very much look like this.
Hmm.
And when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna call it the Andy." This ring is really hard to make, but it's one of the pieces that I love,
Mm.
because it's all hand formed wire. There's about five separate pieces that are kind of overlapped onto each other, and then
I see.
joined in the back. So,
Hmm.
and then so the remnants actually came as a scrap from this ring. So when I cut off, like I have a lot of wire, and then I cut it off, and then basically that's where the design comes from. So if you take a look at that
Mm.
bottom shaft, you could
Yeah,
see
that's
the
cool. I like that.
beginnings of, yeah. So that's what I mean,
Yeah,
how like one design comes after
very,
the other.
very
Yeah,
eco efficient there. Yes.
exactly.
Yeah,
And then this
using
is
everything.
triple threat. This is a fun ring. I just dropped something.
Oops.
Um, Triple threat, just a really fun little piece I've made. This is from the brass band collection. And I think that's one
Hmm.
thing that I actually did not highlight. Sorry, let me just retrieve this. So, there are pieces that have the wider sheet. These are actually not super wide, but some of the things from, well, this is actually, I'll show you a prototype for a bracelet, right? So when I
Hmm.
work in brass in the sheet, this is the brass band collection. And then anything that includes the wire, right? So these
Hmm.
guys, that's part of the drawing series. So
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like two different collections, and I constantly
Hmm.
work on both of them. I don't necessarily put out, here are 10 styles in one collection. I constantly build out new pieces and just kind of see where they go.
So one thing I noticed, I don't know how you mentioned, but your price is always very reasonable. Is that conscious? Are you trying to hit a particular price point, or is that just based on the metals you're working with?
Well, so I wanted to create jewelry that's different and sculptural and expressive, but I really wanted to have a vast variety of women be able to afford them.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
when I go to shows, I would have a 24-year-old girl buy herself a pair of earrings, and I would have a 70-year-old woman buy herself a big cuff or a necklace. So, I really wanted to make sure that there's like, you are buying into something that you want to talk about, you are connecting with my work, and
Hmm.
you're able to afford it. It's not necessarily
Sure.
a $30 piece of jewelry, but it is a $100 piece of jewelry or
Right.
$200 piece of jewelry
Hmm.
that you will be really proud to have in your box. And I didn't want it to be a deterrent. And so I try to price, my work and like my labor, what I mean by work,
Sure.
in a fair way. And I think that I've sort of maintained that as much as I can.
Hmm.
Now, mind you, like a lot of times people ask me to recreate these pieces in precious metals because they really wanted to make them
Yeah.
timeless. So I made things in sterling silver and I make them in 14 karat or 18 karat gold. And obviously that changes things, but
Sure.
there's always an option for that. So
Hmm. Okay. Well,
yeah,
that's interesting. I
yeah,
wasn't sure if that was just a result or a conscious effort on your
it
part.
was a conscious effort.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Thanks for
Um,
asking. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. I guess the only other question I really have, unless you have some more things to show us, and it's, we're in the middle of a pandemic here, so I'm told, and I see your mask there.
Yeah.
But do you see anything changing for your jewelry, either the way you sell it, the way you make it, whatever, going forward, as we kind of spin out of this thing?
I mean, I think that if I speak to half of my friends in the industry, I think that we have put our big hustle pantsuit on, and everybody's trying to figure out what that means for them. So
Hmm.
for me, I can say that I have really gone out the slow route. meaning that every single person that I have connected with, and every new customer that I had made, I literally went out and found that person. And
Mm.
so I have been very deliberate as to how I talk about my work. I really wanted it to be a highlight on, these hands, and as
Mm-hmm.
much as like the final product. And if you look at the pictures that I create, they're very glossy and they're, very fun. And I'm about to have some of my jewelry in a really nice magazine in Chicago. And, there's that element to that, but there's just also the making. And I think that it's scoring me some points. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that I am definitely seeing that people are interested in making sure that the dollars that they do spend are spent well. So
Mm-hmm.
that means either you are value shopping for your family because your income is a little bit lower, and I completely understand that and respect that. As a matter of fact, I volunteer at a local organization to
Mm-hmm.
ensure that everybody has food on their table. But I think when people buy things, this is really, they have been thinking about it for quite some time. They're not making impulse purchases, which I think is really important,
Mm-hmm.
and they're connecting with whoever they're buying from, and I think that's really, really important. So I have shifted the way that I'm showing my work to be a lot more, even more so. I was always like that, but I think even more so, just about like what goes into making, how is it made.
Mm-hmm.
In all of my communication, I'm pretty consistent that you anything that anybody buys, it supports this work and my continuation, um, and my evolution, I guess. So yeah, and I don't. I think it's going to be, the evolution of retail and wholesale and all of that. It's just going to be a healthier balance between all. I think that all of us have to have a really good representation in DTC channel, like
Mm-hmm.
direct to consumer is really important. And I think that all of us have to have that connection. But I think you have to leverage
Sure.
other accounts in other ways. And, even the customers that I've recently received that came directly to me have found me through some of the galleries that carry my work and have seen them on their travels. And so,
Mm-hmm.
and I really value that. So I have been really good about
Mm-hmm.
solidifying and making sure that all of my galleries have new work, keeping them stocked, making sure they have whatever they need. And then also just carrying my own message of, this is where it's at and this is how it's made. And, this is who makes it, and pretty transparent about the whole process. So I think
That's
that's
good.
been one plus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I think we'll draw to a conclusion.
Yeah, so I'm
Mia
just going to say
Hebib.
hi to Bryna. It's nice to see her as well. Thanks for joining.
We have Mia Hebib of Oblique Atelier, and I'd like to thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, John. Nice to see
No
you.
problem. Thank you very much, Mia. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye now.